The time is at hand.
The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order.
One of the many spirits said to haunt the area.
We'll have to prepare for the next one. That will get attention this time.
Unknown animal attack.
We need a great reset.
Babylon the Great is fallen, is fallen.
Coming to you live from 659 feet up in the Appalachian Mountains. This is In Dark Places. Because when it's live, it's so much better. All the big wrestling events and everything on TV, they always say that they're live, and the news is live and everything. And it's not pre-recorded, it's kind of off the cuff. So yeah, we're live. Even if you're listening to this like 12 years from now, it's still live. It don't matter. I've come to the conclusion that we're just pretty much out of control at this point. All kinds of crazy stuff happening in the world. There's a woman in Hamamatsu, Japan, just out minding her own business, walking her dog out on the beach one day. She stumbled upon this big, round, metal spear. Did you hear about that? Just a big metal ball laying on the beach. And they think that it was, at one time, a floating object. And it's now just beached there in Japan. Kind of weird. So another kind of glitch in the Matrix. Up in Canada, this dead bird was floating in the air. Did you see that one? It's crazy. It was just hanging there. Just floating. I don't know if it's still up there or not. It probably eventually fell, I guess. Maybe it ate some helium. I don't know. It's just floating, and it was dead.
Mr. Haunted with some breaking news. Roller coaster in U.S. gets stuck, leaves riders hanging upside down for 45 minutes. News from Charlotte, North Carolina. Park goers experienced terrifying moments after a group of people got stuck on a roller coaster at Carowinds amusement park in Charlotte, North Carolina last week. Park officials said the incident happened on the Flying Cobras last Friday, located in County Fair at Carowinds. So, these people had an unexpected ride stoppage on the lift, park officials said in a statement to Fox television stations. The park's maintenance team responded quickly, and at no time were guests in danger. Of course not. All guests were returned safely to the station, Wild Wit Champs, and unloaded within 30 minutes. The safety and security of our guests and associates is Carowinds' top priority. Officials did not make it immediately known why the ride got stuck. My very first experience at a theme park on a roller coaster, and I got stuck, said Brandon Allen, one of the riders. I personally watched my tears fall from the sky. It was terrifying. We go to the very top where they're backing you up, and he was doing a countdown, Allen continued. He goes, "We are very sorry, but we are having technical difficulties," and we thought he was joking because of the surprise element or something. According to the park's website, rides are inspected and licensed by the North Carolina or South Carolina Department of Labor prior to opening. At Carowinds, the safety of our associates and guests is our top priority, blah, 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 blah. Ensuring that rides are properly, blah, blah, maintained and cared for is just, blah, blah, one way to show this commitment. Fox television stations has reached out to the labor departments for both North and South Carolina for comment. Do you think these park goers Got a free popcorn or anything? I hope there's a follow-up story to this.
Thanks, Jimmy. I used to love roller coasters in my younger days, but I don't know, I guess I'm just old and grumpy now. I don't really like them anymore. It's probably one of the reasons why, because I was afraid I would get hung upside down, maybe. How about the case of the haunting mermaid mummy discovered also in Japan? All kinds of crazy stuff happening in Japan. This is a story by Harry Baker. Thanks, Harry. A centuries-old mummified mermaid that scientists recently revealed to be a gruesome doll of animal parts is even weirder than previously thought, new findings show. In 2022, researchers discovered the mermaid, which is around 12 inches long, lying inside a sealed wooden box with a Japanese temple located in Okayama Prefecture. At the time, researchers thought it was made from the torso and head of a monkey sewed onto a decapitated fish's body. The haunting hybrid, which resembles a ningyo from Japanese mythology, a fish-like creature with a human head that is fabled to help cure disease and increase longevity, had previously been displayed in a glass case at the temple for people to worship before being stored away more than 40 years ago. A letter inside the mummy's box claims that the specimen was caught by a fisher. Not a fisherman, just a fisher. Sometime between 1736 and 1741. But it was likely created decades after that as a hoax to sell to affluent people wanting to improve their health or live longer lives. Researchers from Kurisaki University of Science and the Arts in Japan took possession of the mermaid in early February 2022 with permission from the temple's priests and began studying the eerie artifact using a range of techniques including X-ray and CT scanning, radiocarbon dating, electron microscopy, and DNA analysis. On February 2nd, the team finally released its findings in a KUSA statement, translated from Japanese. And what they found about the mermaid was even more bizarre than expected. The results showed that the mermaid's torso did not belong to a monkey, but instead was made predominantly from cloth, paper, and cotton, which was held together by metal pins running from the neck to lower back. It had also been painted with a paste made from a mix of sand and charcoal. However, the torso was covered in components stripped from other animals, mammal hair and fish skin, likely from a pufferfish. Covered parts of the arms, shoulders, neck, and cheeks. The mermaid's jaw and teeth were also likely taken from a predatory fish, and its claws were made from keratin, meaning they likely came from a real but unidentified animal. The lower half of the mermaid did come from a fish, likely a species of croaker, a ray-finned fish that makes a croaking sound with its swim bladder, which helps it control its buoyancy. The researchers were not able to identify any complete DNA from the mermaid, but radiocarbon dating of the scales indicated they could date back as far as the early 1800s. And now, here is the Nicolas Cage meltdown of the week.
This is a negotiation. You have guns, you have the power to take our lives, but I have the power to make you rich. So please just let her take the car and drive away, and I'll do that. I'll open the safe and make you rich.
Oh, her? You sure she's worth it, Kyle?
$1 million. Yes, that's right, kid. You did it. You hit the mother load. You saw me sign for $1 million with your own eyes. And it's right there, just inches away. All you have to do is just let my wife go. And then come on down and grab it.
This week on the show, kind of going along with the Mysterious Places theme, we're going to be talking about Clapham Wood on England's South Downs. The Greenwood has always been a place where strange things happen, a doorway from the real world into the beyond, and weird things still happen in the woods. The story is by Hamish Howard and Toyne Newton, making his second appearance on the show. Clapham Wood is a small, densely treed area nestling in the shelter of the South Downs in West Sussex, England. Travelling southward, a sharp left turn off the busy road known as Long Furlong at Findon leads into this area of mystery and intrigue and strange disappearances and UFO sightings. There is even an ancient hollow tree which signposts the way to the village, adding to the general air of mystery. That there is something weird in the woods has always been rumored, but what that something is, no one seems to know. On a hill above the village, as if protecting its parishioners from the dark woods beyond, stands the 13th century church of the Blessed Virgin Mary. The strange atmosphere of the woods themselves is felt immediately. Stunted trees twist and writhe as if in pain. There is a larger crater believed to have been caused by a wartime bomb, although some maintain it was a meteorite, and yet others say it's merely an ancient lime pit where nothing grows, and there are mysterious little clearings containing ruins of old cottages. Perhaps it was from one of these, a couple of centuries ago, that an old woman saw what would today be recognized as a UFO. She told villagers that one dark night she had seen a bright round shape like the full moon float down into the woods and disappear in the bushes. The outcome of this event seems to have been that the woods were filled with fumes that stinketh of burning matter, and that many local folk thereafter were afeared to go there. As for the old woman of the woods, she appears to have been immediately smitten of the palsy, and was given a wide berth by the locals. This may have been because of her sighting, but it seems more reasonable to suppose she was the victim of one of the witch hunts so prevalent in England at the time. Since those far-off days, there have been many more UFO sightings, and some say landings in the small area of Clapham Wood. And although several witnesses have given reports to the police, there must be many people who were too afraid of ridicule to do so. The fact that these sightings often occur at night when few witnesses are about makes them very difficult to prove. One such sighting concerns a telephone engineer who was driving home alone along the Findon Road after night duty when he saw a large saucer-shaped object in the sky above the woods. It hovered for some time before making a circle of the area and then veered off. There was in October of 1972 when other sightings were independently reported in that area. One report that came from a couple out walking near Long Furlong who thought they saw Jupiter or Venus low in the western sky until it started to move very quickly due north, keeping in line with a ridge of the downs as it came toward them. Suddenly, when the object was over Clapham Wood, A beam of light descended vertically from it, and then rapidly withdrew, and the object shot away, northeastward, at a great speed. The beam was visible for about 10 seconds. In fact, the brief time the Clapham Wood UFOs are visible makes their verification almost impossible, as one inhabitant of the village found out in 1968. It was 2 a.m., and being unable to sleep, he was making himself a hot drink. Glancing out of the kitchen window, he saw a saucer-shaped object hovering directly over the nearby woods. He promptly made an emergency call to the police. Although the call was answered speedily, by the time the police arrived, the UFO had disappeared.
Here comes Meadowlark Lemon. He's never tried Charmin. Watch me get him. Now. I got it. 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 What is it? That's Charmin. Haven't you ever tried it? No. Is it soft? Squeeze it. It is soft. And cushiony. And squeezable. Gotcha. See? Just squeeze the Charmin. Too. And I got you.
Charmin. The squeezing gets you. The softness keeps you.
Here's some cryptids from the state of Pennsylvania. There's the Gewoggle of Clinton County, a sort of wolf-bird-horse hybrid that's said to lurk in the elk country landscape. Also in Clinton County, but closer to I-80 frontier, the Susquehanna seal makes appearances in the river. Clarion County once had the Clarion What Is It, a weird creature spotted in the Cook Forest area. And Potter County had a creature that was sighted by hunters way back in 1897. It was reported in the Potter Enterprise, which gave the creature its name, the Potter Nondescript. The first report hit the newspapers on April 21st, 1897. A fisherman up in Nelson Run, in the present-day Dark Skies landscape, reportedly saw this creature walking upright. The hairy creature screamed and beat its chest. The fisherman jumped onto his horse, which was already frightened, and fled the scene. The creature chased the fisherman and the horse, but abandoned the chase quickly. After the first sighting, the newspaper speculated that this could have been some sort of gorilla, perhaps escaped from a traveling circus. The next report of the creature, however, hit the papers a week later and deepened the mystery. Some thought the thing a myth, perhaps originating from the fertile brain of the writer. But now, perhaps they may think otherwise after reading this. William Butler of Denton Hill had claimed to see the creature, and the paper stated that Butler was known as a very truthful man. He spotted the creature eating a groundhog, and when it saw him, it roared, beat its chest, and jumped towards him. One jump covering a distance of about 30 feet. This time there was a better description. The creature was about 6 feet tall, upright, with an excessively hairy head, and tusks that were 6 to 7 inches long. This time, also, the newspaper gave the creature its name. The article read, Bill looked at the Potter County Nondescript fully a minute or more. That is the worst name for a cryptid, the Nondescript. It's not even scary. The creature would have likely attacked him, except Butler's dog barked at it and seemed to frighten it off. Butler said he had a gun in his pocket, but was so shocked by the thing, he never even thought to use it. The newspaper advised local fishermen and hunters to be careful. The May 12th edition of the Enterprise reported that the creature seemed to have moved south, heading down into Clinton County and towards Kettle Creek. The article mentioned that the creature had been frightening, but had not hurt anyone or done any known damage or expressed their wish that it would stay down in Kettle Creek for a while. Now, the paper reported that it had not hurt anyone. Well, what about that poor little groundhog that he had in his mouth? What about him?
The nondescript. It's a really unfortunate name. And thanks again, Jimmy. By far, the most significant sightings in this area are those reported by Paul Glover of the British Phenomenon Research Group. I think he was in the last story from last week. Sounds familiar. Are you out there, Paul Glover? Shoot us an email. Yeah. So he's with the British Phenomenon Research Group, and he was walking with a friend along the downs toward Clapham Wood one clear starlit night in the summer of 1967. At about 10 p.m., both suddenly became unaware of a huge black mass low in the sky, blotting out the stars as it moved very quickly toward them. The object was boomerang-shaped. It made no sound. As it passed overhead, the displacement of air was so great they ducked into the bushes for safety. They vehemently denied it could have been a cloud, for it retained its shape, was on a definite course, and there was no wind to drive it, certainly not at the tremendous speed at which it was traveling. Somewhat shaken, they continued their walk, and minutes later saw two bright objects high in the sky, which they watched for several minutes. One of the UFOs released a smaller object that traveled across to the second object, seemed to enter it, and then re-emerge and veered off, disappearing from sight. There was no denying that that night there was increased UFO activity in the area for some reason, but it was when Paul Glover and his companion were approaching Clapham Wood about an hour later that the most spectacular sighting occurred. Two yellow lights descended in the region of the woods, followed just a few seconds later by two more, and then a final pair, making a total of 3 groups of 2. 6. You know? Then at the point where they seemed to have dipped down into the woods, 2 white beams of light shot out horizontally, quite impeded by the contours of the downlands, followed by the next 2 beams, and then the final 2, all traveling very fast before disappearing into the night sky. No craft of any kind could be seen behind the lights. During that same year, in the village of Rustington, a few miles westward, along the coast, 2 schoolboys, Toy Newton and John Arnold, who had never heard of Clapham Wood, had a strange story spelled out to them on a Ouija board that Clapham Wood was a base for spacecraft, and that one had landed recently to fetch supplies of sulfur and other chemicals. No one believed the boys, of course, but nearly 10 years later, an investigation was carried out when soil samples were taken from the woods. From the report given in the BBC TV's Nationwide program at the time, it seemed there was more than a grain of truth, at least in the boys' sulfur story. The investigation had actually been triggered off by reports of dogs disappearing in the woods in 1975. According to a local newspaper, the Worthing Herald, Wallace, a 3-year-old chow belonging to Mr. and Mrs. Peter Love of Clapham, disappeared, as did a 2-year-old collie belonging to Mr. John Cornford. Apparently the collie, although normally obedient, suddenly rushed off into a small copse between 2 trees in an area known locally as the Chestnuts, and was never seen again, although its mystified owner searched the place thoroughly. Mrs. H.T. Wells, who lived at nearby Durrington, said that when her collie gets near the woods it becomes desperate, and a golden retriever belonging to Mr. E.F. Rawlings of Worthing ran into the woods one day and returned very distressed. Shortly afterward, it became paralyzed, and the vet had to destroy it. Another dog owner, who wished to remain anonymous, so please let's respect her wishes, reported that when she took her dog to the area, it ran around in circles, foaming at the mouth, with its eyes bulging out of its head, as if in great pain, and only with difficulty did she manage to entice it back into her car and drive home, where the dog eventually calmed down. This part of the woods is easily accessible to the public, being on the A27 dual carriageway, and it is regularly used for exercising dogs. It is also used by horseback riders. One young horseman, who wished to remain anonymous, please let's respect his wishes, tethered his mount firmly to a tree stump while he relieved himself in the woods, and was amazed to find the animal had disappeared during his brief absence. Although he searched the area extensively and made exhaustive inquiries, the horse was never found. Animals are not alone in being affected by the peculiar atmosphere in this particular part of the woods, for several people have described how they felt pushed over by invisible forces, while others have felt faint for no apparent reason. Two men walking together in the woods told how they were both suddenly afflicted at the same time, one doubling over in agony and staggering, the other clutching at his head and saying he felt like his eardrums were being pulled from the inside out. These painful effects disappeared simultaneously when the two men had gone about 50 yards further. It seems beyond doubt that this small area encapsulates a source of electrical charge or unknown force, which, when released into the atmosphere in small bursts, seems to affect anyone in the vicinity at the time with some kind of abnormal pressure or even mild apoplexy. I don't know. But what the force is, no one seems to know. Its strange and disturbing effects seem to be metamorphic, for, according to the local press, the body of a man who went missing in the woods was found only 2 weeks later, in such an advanced state of decomposition that only when the body was positively identified could the short time lapse be pinpointed. Forensic evidence showed that the normally accepted rate of a decomposing corpse had, in this particular case, been greatly accelerated due to some unknown factor. Mystifying reports such as these have a double effect in that, while keeping apprehensive people away, those given to seeking the truth of such situations are particularly drawn to the area. Among these is Dave Stringer of the Southern Paranormal Investigative Group, who, while not disbelieving the reports of so many independent witnesses, nevertheless visited the woods in August of 1977 with an open mind and his Geiger counter. He was aware of a strange silence, but the woods were beautiful and the air still as he came to the part called the Chestnuts. Everything appeared normal, but as he walked through the heavy undergrowth, he had to raise the Geiger counter above his head. It was then that it began to register at an alarming rate before returning to normal. Wonderingly, Stringer looked back at the area through which he had just passed and saw a dark shape about 12 feet in height. While not being distinctive in outline, it was very definitely not smoke, or a smoke-enshrouded bush, but he could describe it only as a black mass. Seconds later, a large white disc shot out from behind two nearby trees at an angle of about 45 degrees and disappeared into the sky. And simultaneously, the dark form disappeared also. Stringer retracted his steps, not using the Geiger counter this time, but looking down at the ground, which was part grass and part muddy footpath, for some evidence of a solid shape to back up what he thought he had witnessed. At the spot where the form had appeared, he came upon a faint imprint of a four-toed foot twice the width of a man's foot, but very narrow at the heel. Only on one other occasion had he seen such a mysterious footprint, and that had been at Devil's Dyke, near Brighton, where there was known to be a black magic coven. Could there be a connection? Part of a black coven's ritual involves the burning of sulfur, which could account for the acrid smell and fumes reported in the woods. And one particular branch of their rumored experimentation concerns the dematerialization of small creatures. This, it is claimed, releases the creature's life spark, which escapes without form or shape. Stringer made a quick sketch of a single footprint, which, although unknown to him at the time, coincides significantly with the footprint of the demon Amdusius, illustrated in the 1863 edition of Colin de Placey's Dictionnaire Infernal. The consistency of the UFO sightings over Clapham Wood continued during 1978 and 1979, one being reported by a man standing on nearby High Down Hill, which is higher than Clapham and overlooks the woods. The witness says he saw a large orange ball about twice the size of an aircraft, which maneuvered over the woods for some 20 minutes before disappearing. And several independent witnesses from different vantage points reported seeing a huge light in the sky above Clapham Wood one summer's night in 1979. It descended vertically into the woods and glowed among the trees. Could it be explained away as mere coincidence? It seems unlikely, with so many people coming forward with similar stories of sightings, all made at the same time. The spat of strange reports that year concluded with the disappearance of the Reverend Neil Snelling, vicar of Clapham Church. One fine morning after shopping at Worthing, he decided to walk back to his staining home through Clapham Wood. Almost certainly he would have taken the Chestnuts route. He has not been heard of since, and an exhaustive search of the area revealed nothing. What happened to him? Why did the dogs disappear so completely within a few yards of their unsuspecting owners? How can both solid bodies wash into thin air without leaving a trace? Is there a deadly chemical in the soil, or some unknown force that disrupts the molecular structure of organic creatures? Did a meteorite or some other object from space once fall in the area? And if so, is it giving off harmful rays or acting as a beacon for UFOs? Those questions. So many independent reports cannot be ignored, but real proof of the phenomenon is not easy to come by. It was in the hope of obtaining some form of proof that Paul Glover armed himself with a camera and accompanied Dave Stringer and another friend made for Clapham Wood. It was a dark, clear evening, but there was no UFO activity. Eventually, they decided to make their way homeward via the Chestnuts route. And it was as they were walking through this area that all three of them simultaneously had a feeling of intense cold. They hurried on and the feeling ceased. So they walked back over the same area, 3 times in fact, and each time experienced this sudden and unnatural drop in temperature. Glover decided to point the camera at what he thought was the source of this strange condition, seeing nothing, but firing the shutter purely on speculation. When the photograph was developed, however, it showed an uncanny white mass, revealing the unmistakable image of a goat's head, the age-old symbol of satanic rites. Was this confirmation of the past or present activities of a black coven, or was it quite separate, adding yet another phenomenon to the enigma of Clapham Wood? I think that's about all we got for this week. Let me check. Yeah, I think so. So we'll see you again right here next week. Thanks. Thanks as always, Mr. Jimmy Haunted. Thank you for listening. If you've got a scary story you'd like to be a guest on the show, send an email to indarkplacespod@hotmail.com. We'll see you again right here next week. God bless you and take care. Toynay? Maybe it's like Demi Moore and Jimmy. Maybe his name is Toynay. Yeah, sorry about that, Toynay.